Last video, I got everything flattened and graded pretty well. Just got some excavator work to do to get footings ready. But before I do that, I need to do the layout, which the first thing I'm gonna do is I want everything to be parallel with the shop. So I'm gonna use the beams on the end of the shop to establish a parallel line and then build off from there. Doing layout is not hard, it's just tedious. So I've got all my supplies together, got some rebar stakes I cut, hammer to pound them in, a couple tape measures, long ones because I'm pulling pretty big distances, some string lines, some paint, and because I'm using the rebar stakes, some caps for safety. Key thing for layout to work well is making sure all the parallel lines are actually parallel and all the perpendicular lines are actually perpendicular, which is square. So all your squares are actually square, not rhombuses, not a little, twisted or crooked. We do that by measuring triangles. Normally we know, say, the base and the height of a triangle, but on the ground, what we don't know is the long leg, the hypotenuse. So I'll just use my phone to calculate that and pull those measurements and drop my stakes and then double check everything as we go. We should have a nice square. So I'm gonna start by pulling off of one post and then the other post to get a parallel line. Forgot to mention, I also have a plumb bob, and my measurements are 29 feet and 46 feet and 3/4 inch. So I'm just gonna bring those two measurements together and then use my plumb bob to mark where my stake goes. Of course, we don't just trust that everything worked out right. We always want to verify. Since the idea is we're making a square or a rectangle, either way, every corner is 90 degrees, the way we can check and make sure these pins are properly set is they should be the same distance apart as the outside of those two posts. And looks like we're within 1/8 of an inch. That's plenty well enough for me, especially because this isn't really a critical line. This is just to get it parallel from the shop. And if I'm not perfectly parallel, if I'm out 1/2 inch, I mean, you're never gonna notice, but everything from here is very critical because this is going to drive my excavation, and I'm gonna use these pins for straightening walls, laying posts, etc. So now we're gonna get really finicky, but I feel good about how this went so far. Before long, these are gonna get pulled up. I need to, because they'll be in the way, I need to establish some stakes well outside of where I'm going to be working, and I'll do that just with a string line and sighting down it with my eyeball using the micrometer and make sure it's straight. If that sounds intimidating, like, you'd be surprised how good your eye is at identifying straight lines and something that isn't straight. If it doesn't look straight, it's not. So yeah, I'll just pull this, lightly touch the other stake, and as long as it looks straight to my eye, that's where I'm going to pound in the stake. I did think ahead and prepare a thicker, taller stake since this is going downhill, but I didn't think about trying to transfer my line down. So just got a level here to check plumb. Once I get my string straight, now on my baseline, I've got my two outlying stakes done that other one off camera. Now I can mark the first corner of the building since this is going to be one backside of the building. What I'm doing is using one of the first stakes that I pulled because I do want to keep everything kind of balanced off the shop. Did the math, and I'm going to mark first corner, then I'll go the other way, mark the other corner, then I start pulling square to get the far parallel line. Once again, use my phone calculator to get the diagonal, the hypotenuse, pulling off both corners, And I'll just line up the measurements are supposed to be and set my stake. Since I'm making a rectangle and I've already got these hooked, I'll take the exact same measurements, but I'm gonna flip-flop, and that'll give me the outside corner over there, and then I'll pull between, and if the distance between this stake and that stake is the same as that stake and that stake, we're good. And then I'll do the same thing and pull distance between these two, distance between those two. All right, got my 4 corners staked out finally. I kept chasing it, my numbers were never being the same, and the problem is one of my long tapes that I just got yesterday for this, it has a 2 1/4 inch hook that adds 2 1/4 inches when you hook it on something. Now I didn't forget about that, and I didn't mess up and use the wrong side of the tape. These long tapes have a 1/10 side and an inch side. So you gotta make sure you're actually on the inches and not the tenths, unless you're doing things in tenths. But what I was doing is instead of subtracting the 2 1/4 inches that loop was adding, I kept adding it. Because remember, oh, this tape adds 2 1/4. So then let's say if I had to pull 51 feet, I was pulling 51 feet plus 2 1/4 inches instead of minus 2 1/4 inches, which meant my measurements were off 5.5 inches. So once I figured that out, fortunately I did do it the correct way on the first 2 stakes that I did, so that was right. So I just had to reset my corners. But yeah, glad I figured that out. Now for much easier things, now that I have a square box, everything's gonna go a lot easier. As you can see on this pavilion, a lot of it's open, but then we have this section that is enclosed. So I've got the 4 corners of the post marked out. Now I want to lay out the lines of where this is going, because the foundation for that is going to be a little bit different. So this post is centered between the difference, but I have this beam coming off the post that's flush with, if this is the near side, it's flush with the far side. So what I need to do is find the edge of that beam, because that's going to tie into the wall flush, and that's where the edge of my concrete form is going to be. I want to pull my string line, so when I set up my concrete forms for the footers, it's perfectly in line with the edge of that bottom plate. So this is an 8x8 post that's 7 1/4 inches actual, so the midway point is going to be halfway between that, so I need to find half the distance, which would be 3 5/8. So I need to go 12 feet is the midpoint, so 12 feet plus 3 5/8 is the front edge of that post. That's what I'm going to mark on both short sides on the ground. Then I can pull a line there for my concrete forms and excavation for those footers. Now that I'm working inside the box, measuring gets a lot easier, because I can pull my tape the whole way to make sure it's straight, and then just set my measurement. I don't have to worry about pulling diagonals. I probably will run the diagonal, then check that pin placement from, you know, that pin and then the other corner pin to do a diagonal check, just to make sure everything is super on point. But that's just extra checking, not totally necessary. Whew, that's it, got my layout done. Let me walk through what I just time-lapsed there. So because I spent like 2 hours getting my 4 corners set and dead straight, the rest of the measurements were really quick, because I could just pull a straight line, mark wherever I need, and know it's gonna be good. No more need for diagonals, because I knew those 4 corners were good. So, and then to mark where I need to excavate the post, because I had to do it more than once and I'm a woodworker, I made a little jig. I've got to make a 24 by 24 inch footing. So this is 24 by 24. I cut out the size of the post and did little center marks. And then I could just set my jig on the post, either on the corner or centered, depending. Here you can see, as I was talking about, the X I measured off from the dead center to where the corner of the post was be. So that's where I marked it. Another corner. This one was also a corner, and this is one of those where I'm not worried about having a permanent stake, so I just used a little flag, because I didn't need a stake, I just needed to know where to set my jig to mark the paint, because again, once I set up my lines later, I can just pull tape and get those. Here was center, so just mark center. So that was handy. And then for the long turn down on this slab that's going to be under the load bearing walls, I mark those out on both sides. So yeah, all that's left to do, which I'll do off camera, is just extend out my stakes, kind of like I did with that one for the stakes that I want to be able to pull again easy later. And that's it. Time to rent a Mini X and start digging. Oh, well, the other thing will be all the drains and plumbing, but I'm going to rent a smaller excavator with a smaller bucket for that. So I'll get a bigger excavator to do this, as well as all the retaining wall stuff. So I want to dig all these, then I want to confirm where I want everything to go. Then I'll lay out the plumbing much the same way, except I'm not as worried about everything being square, just making sure the fixtures go where the fixtures need to go. Anyway, hope you learned something, were inspired, or at least entertained. If you're one of the kind of people who like to like and comment and subscribe or even share my videos, super thanks for doing that. Otherwise, thank you for watching the video, and until next time, make time to make something.